Let's make sure you can actually see me, hopefully, and no wobblehead situations. Okay, good to see a small crowd. I'm better with small crowds, so it makes me happy. Excellencies, dear participants, conveners. Today I pick up on something very crucial that Dr. Floyd presented in his opening speech, the idea of responsibility. I'm a PhD researcher at University of Antwerp, and I investigate the impact of digital platforms in contemporary warfare. Fun subject. Amongst other things, I look at questions of expertise. I look at how epistemic authority emerges, evolves, and is sustained in the governance of technologies with critical military applications, such as military applications of artificial intelligence and of nuclear weapons. I ask, who to trust to establish the facts? What's a legitimate source of knowledge? And even if we get these questions right, how to make smart decisions amidst overwhelming flows of information? And how do these choices of lent responsibility shape our verification mechanisms in an environment by rapid political decision-making as well as disinformation? Well, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with the CTBTO at all? It's this. Should the CTBTO say what it knows? When and why? Post-entry into force. Well, now, most of the work of the CTBTO is routine. Takes place in the almost invisible daily operations, far from active public attention. Yet, in October 2024, after some tremors in Iran, the PTS stepped directly into the public arena. On October 5, within hours, we had, if this works, various Twitter accounts alleged that the earthquakes in northern Iran were not earthquakes, but actually covert nuclear tests. Claims relied on misinterpreted seismic readings, stories migrated from social media to French blogs, then to kind of mainstream outputs. This speedy disinformation campaign was actually carefully documented in a recent Seismica publication too. It's open access and very striking for anyone who's interested. But now going back, what did the CTBTO do? It responded with its strongest verification tool. It was hard facts drawn from its verification regime, reviewed IMS data, confirmed natural seismic origin, countered disinformation with science-based transparency. It released its findings to public audiences. And it did so in a striking manner, which is where I will leave you, right there. And to my knowledge, such an intervention isn't daily operations. Good thing that it doesn't have to occur too often, but when it did, it had a very strong impact. The fuzzy claims subsided, completely discredited, and this helped ease geopolitical tensions. Well, this was an expressive and impressive example. What happened is that CTBTO acted as a source of unrivaled authority. It was trusted by its state signatories, but also the global public. Not least because the IMS has something not one country on Earth solely has, a global way of gathering, analyzing, storing data through top scientific standards. What's not to like, you might ask? Nothing, actually, but what social scientists usually tend to do is ask awkward questions, and I'm going to be posing one of those. Tons of them, actually. It's an occupational hazard, even and especially on matters of such political importance, in such powerful cases like this one. So one such question, contextualized for you in the form of an anecdote. Imagine CTBTO has entered into force. It's all over the news. The ES goes to a high-level opening. There is a profile event, and a journalist goes. You have spoken of the CTBTO's successful handling of the disinformation campaign on the Iranian earthquake back in 2024. Hopefully it's not that far in time that we've entered into force, but besides the point. Having entered into force, can we hope to see the CTBTO play an active role in fighting disinformation? Does this success story signal a new vision set out for the organization? I say yes, please, but who am I? What if some state parties say no? Actually, that's a bit fuzzy. They might argue that this sort of direct pronouncement may bring some hurdles. They may speak of sticking strictly to what is spelled out in the mandate, being responsive to state parties, and because it does not specify a direct responsibility for public communication. They could talk of confidentiality obligations. The treaty operational manuals and the data require authorized data release. It's protected with the treaty. They might be concerned of not having time for domestic political response in the case that the CTBTO spoke first. And clearly, these are not trivial questions. They're not trivial claims. CTBTO's primary responsibility is with state parties, not directly the public. But could it be both? And if so, what might be some of the ways we can standardize, regularize, and institutionalize things for this pitch? Well, one radical, if not drastic response, might be to think of amending the treaty, to give the CTBTO an institutionalized authority to talk about sensitive scientific issues, falling squarely in its broad nuclear test verification regime and the mandate, like the Iran case in point. For this, for the lawyers in the room, we need an amendment conference. Not that I'm a lawyer myself, but the treaty itself provides for this. It's Clause 2, Article 7, Section Amendments, page 42. But now you might be thinking, is this remotely realistic to think about a treaty change for such an occurrence? Even if a consensus emerges, which is magical. Will all sorts of other changes be demanded as a part of the diplomatic haggling? Maybe. Changes could be agreed within the existing treaty framework. In strictly defined situations, CTBTO would be systematically empowered to make automatic release of certain verified data, whether that be seismic, radionuclide, whatever, and this procedure would be done under standing operating procedures, priorly agreed. A dedicated disinformation unit, maybe, or the ES himself, can make immediate public statements that use hard scientific facts to dispel rumors and mistakes gaining traction in public arena. But now let's get back to the awkward questions with social scientists. Even these modest changes through an amendment might be criticized in the case of this proposal coming to life. Why is the CTBTO asserting itself some sort of a monopoly on legitimized data and expertise? One answer to this is increasing transparency. Easy to say, you might say, but it would be making visible in publicly available technical reporting, not only in the walls of the VIC, of New York, of Geneva, how fact-based expert interpretations are actually reached, to make this publicly available in such high-risk environments. Now, this is sort of a different CTBTO, I imagined just now with you. It's an organization that becomes a publicly responsive verification institution, as well as a state party responsive international organization. Now back to my opening questions. Who to trust to establish facts? What's the legitimate source of knowledge? As we move towards, hopefully, the treaty's entry into force, the question before us is not only how to detect nuclear testing, but also how can our best verification institutions, like the CTBTO, safeguard credibility and responsibility in the disinformation age? Addressing this challenge is essential, not only for the CTBT, as I mentioned, but for emerging technologies of critical military applications, with equally far-reaching consequences if we don't do something about it, such as the military applications of artificial intelligence. Well, I don't need to take so much of the space with the long speech, so I will here stop, and thank you for listening. I'm open for questions, also in the coffee room, where I'm able to rant out even more. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Farah. Are there any questions in the audience? Yes. There's a microphone just coming your way, Ray.
Hello, Raymond Goff from Open Nuclear Network. So my question was just, I think, in theory, the idea of the CTBT being more transparent and open and responsive to the public, I think most of us would agree is a good thing. But I just wonder about the risks that might be associated with that. So I think, as we've seen in recent years with the IEA, their public-facing statements and a lot of the work they're doing is coming under increased scrutiny, and that's leading to some parties trying to delegitimize the organization. So what are your thoughts around that, and how do you protect the CTBT from disinformation and the sorts of politicization that could be associated with it taking more of a public-facing role?
My radical take would be that transparency shouldn't be made to be a tool in public perception management. I think by inviting the organization to become, as well as a state party responsive international organization, but also a verification institution, to take such a strong role as a verification institution, you invite the public scrutiny onto this discussion. And I think that's what's needed. I can't think of a better organization to serve that role. I think that was the starting point. Maybe that's the beginning for this question for me. When I think of an open data movement, when I think of your great work, Doanan, I think of ways how can we bring in international organizations into this environment that's changing and not leave them into these big buildings with gates, but also invite the public scrutiny built into its own regime so that it doesn't become a hot topic, but also maybe becomes a space of conversation, which is my take.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up.
All good.
So the CTBT, when it speaks infrequently and with authority, I think that has a lot of impact, right? Do you think that it could be an issue that if it was a lot more outspoken, that would maybe dilute some of the work in comparison to like what we saw with Iran and the statements around that?
I do believe that it comes with risks, which is exactly why I was trying to do this thought exercise, right? Okay, imagine all these things. I still think the risks outweigh the benefits of having such a technically and scientifically founded organization serve a verification role. Listen, I'm not the diplomat who has to handle these political negotiations, right? Which is the comfortable place I hold in asking these big questions, which I think the question being asked itself starts a conversation, maybe figuring out how these could be implemented and how to work around these ideas. Maybe not tomorrow, but hopefully for the years to come.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll have to move on now, but we will have time for more questions if you have other questions for FAIR at the end of the presentations. So I'll hand over to Maggie now.
Thank you.